from the worlds of the Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar. The December Dump.
Alright, Kellen, why does the Army of the Dead suck at basketball?
Got no limbs.
What?
Got no limbs.
Not quite. It's because white men can't jump.
Well, that's just racist.
Anyway, hello and welcome to our next Game of Thrones reaction review. We're doing Season 3, Episode 5, which is called Kissed by Fire. If you want to see our full-length reaction, go to patreon.com/Genesis of Androzani. Also, you could get 24 hours early access to videos like this. And you could request videos for us to do. We also have a Twitter, which is twitter.com/GAndrozani to get in contact. And someday I'm going to remember what my link is for my letterboxd. I can't remember what it is, so we're going to move on. So, we're now almost at the halfway point of Season 3. After this episode we will be. So what are your thoughts going into this episode?
After last episode, I mentioned how it finally felt that after a season and a half, Daenerys' story is starting to actually move forward. After the events of Season 1, it really felt like that for a long while, that she hasn't had any proper development with her overall story. So I'm glad that's starting to sort of pick up momentum. Other than that, Jaime is getting more screen time, which I am enjoying. I'm enjoying his story. Got some introductions of new characters, I think, this season as well, which I think have been pretty solid. Overall, I think this season so far has been solid. And I think it'll probably continue that momentum. I'm just not sure if... I don't know. I think it's been rather solid, and I'm not sure what I am wanting more of, I guess.
It's a very slow burn at the moment because obviously they're adapting they're adapting one book into 2 seasons.
They are.
So you're getting a very slow burn. But I think in some regards there's a necessary factor to that.
Sure.
But yeah. Let's hope for the best. So, shall we begin Kissed by Fire?
Oh yeah.
What is this? Yunkai? You haven't seen this before?
No. That's a new one, yeah.
And it's written by Brian Cogman.
Lord of Light, give us wisdom.
I love how they're using the same music they used for Stannis and the Red Woman.
Yeah.
What's his biggest fear? Fire. Kissed by fire.
Guess this is the end of the Hound. That was gory.
Not today.
Oh.
Huh.
Wonder why he's got those scars around his neck now.
All right. You still a crow? It's time you proved yourself.
I just think this was the scene where Kit Harington started to fancy her.
Possibly. I don't want it.
I don't want it. I never have.
Kissed by fire?
Spoke no common, but God, he was built like a man.
Yeah, thanks. I think I've heard enough.
Isn't it interesting how much more chemistry they have than, say, someone else?
It's almost believable.
You're a vow-breaking, Night's Watch deserting bastard.
Ah,
Harrenhal.
they've arrived.
We've lost a hand.
No, my lord. He has it here.
Thank you, my lord.
Isn't he so
Find
nice?
suitable rooms for our guests. We'll speak later.
That's brilliant cinematography. I love that.
Bolton.
Mm-hmm.
Your sister is alive and well.
He kind of looks like a younger version of like Tywin from his like facial structure.
But he also looks like an older version of Daniel Craig.
Yeah, he does a bit actually. Yeah. Oh Jesus.
He is very much like Tywin, but he's on the opposite side.
Mm-hmm. Oh God.
Oh. It's like a witch doctor. Oh! I like that detail. Littlefinger's like holding his hand.
I know. Your Grace.
I shall do my best.
Thank you. And your best will prove better than when I asked you to locate Arya Stark.
I assure you that it will.
Jokes on you, he has seen her.
God's boy, that's enough. We're not in a tavern.
Pardon
No
me.
need to speak. Fetch some. I always take figs mid-afternoon. They help me with bowels.
Oh, that's so disgusting.
I'd hoped we might discuss a few financial matters.
I climbed all those steps to discuss financial matters.
The royal wedding.
This part. We'll pay for half the expenses, and the celebrations will go on as planned. Is that sufficient?
Quite sufficient, thank you.
Very good, then. That's settled. Good day.
Just mending Lord Barrick's armor.
Why?
He's growing a bit of a beard.
I can be your family.
You wouldn't be my family. You'd be my lady.
Can't believe they played Hot Pie's theme. Oh yeah, these two. Oh no. Well, rest in peace.
Bring them in.
Oh, they revolted. Just when I remember the kids, they get murdered.
They were his kids.
They were boys!
Look at them. Tell your mother to look at them. She killed them as much as I.
She
Mother
is.
had nothing.
Mercy, sire, I didn't kill anyone. I only watched for the guards.
This one was only the watcher. Hang him last so he can watch the others die.
Please, please, don't make me do it.
But killing's wrong, Rob. Stark's world are just falling down more and more every day.
Rob won't listen to any of them. Notice they're playing the same music from the scene where Theon beheaded Roderick Cassell.
This is pretty much parallel of it. It's raining.
Rickard Karstark.
It's very similar.
Kill me and be cursed. You are no king of mine.
One stroke.
Do I frighten you, child?
No,
Did have his shoulder open earlier.
not 6 times. Just once.
I don't think it works that way, child.
I wept with joy.
Oh, so you're crazy.
There's another tub.
This one suits me fine.
He's gotten really frail, you can see it.
Don't worry. You're supposed to get me to King's Landing in one piece. Not going so well, is it? I want to render the Honourable Ned Stark wanted to hear my side. He judged me guilty of the moment he set eyes on me, by what right does the wolf judge the lion? By what right?
Up! The Kingslayer!
Jamie. My name's Jamie.
Speaking of Targaryens,
What a lovely transition.
To the words, in the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. All I could think of was how badly I had to piss. And full plate metal.
It's Samuel Anderson.
no, it's not.
Oh, what's his name? Something like that.
It's not Samuel Anderson.
I thought that was his name.
No, it's not Danny Pink.
That might be who I'm thinking of. I know it's not him. I know they're different people.
Jacob Anderson.
That's it. I knew it was Anderson.
The Karstarks are gone. Almost half our forces.
Because you stupid boy.
I should like to see you spar with a proper partner, sir.
God.
That didn't take long.
Oh, it took long enough.
Mm.
Seems our night of flowers is engaged to be wed.
I've always wanted a ship. Now
Pulling the strings.
if you wish to stay, then of course you'll stay. We'll speak again when I return.
This has been building since the joust.
Yeah. That whole 5 minutes was pulling the strings to the nth degree.
Missing some of Loris's favorite bits, but I'm sure they'll make do.
Your joke.
I seem to remember she has an older brother.
The Karstarks have marched hope.
And how do we do that?
We find Sansa Stark a different husband.
Wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Ugh. Just from that line.
She's flowered, I assure you. She and I have discussed it at length.
There, you see? You were wed. And it is past time you were wed.
I was wed. Or don't you remember?
Only too well.
Seen that shot too many times.
As will you.
What do you mean?
You'll marry Sir Loras.
You're my daughter! You will do as I command, and you will marry Loras Tyrell. And put an end to the disgusting rumors about you, once and for all.
My children. You disgraced the Lannister name for far too long.
Oh, that was a brilliant shot because it had the lion, then a pillar between them.
Yeah.
All right, Callum, your initial thoughts on Kissed by Fire?
I thought that was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it had a lot of really incredible scenes and some very dramatic scenes. A lot of symbolism, a lot of theming going along.
I think in terms of themes, this is the most prevalent one we've had, with the whole idea of Kissed by Fire linking to almost every scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whether that be literally, metaphorically, or subtly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is one of my favourite episodes of Game of Thrones. It's obviously not as it's not as consequential as some of the others, but in terms of characters, it's one of my favourites. It's for me, it's pretty much a flawless episode. I can't think of one thing about it that I even remotely dislike. I thought it was
I'm pretty much the same.
I thought almost every scene was brilliant. And it was just the whole thing from top to bottom was absolutely amazing. Yeah,
I thought it was really good stuff.
There's a couple of there's a couple of scenes in this episode that for me define a couple of the characters. Like they are really like some of my favorite scenes for those characters as well. So shall we begin with those characters?
Yes.
So let's begin with Sandor Clegane. So we start the episode very just right off the bat with the try-by combat. I love this. You know, obviously the episode being called Kissed by Fire. I love the fact that that relates to the Hound and of obviously, you know, when he was a child, the mountain pushed him into the fire. That's why he's got that scar on his face. So now in this trial by combat, he has to face someone with a burning sword. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And the sword fight with him and Beric was great.
Yeah, I thought it was a very, very entertaining fight.
Great way to start. And then, of course, it's revealed that Thoros of Myr can bring back Beric with the Lord of Light's power and has done so 5 times before this point. And he did it again here. But then we find out, obviously, that every time that Beric dies and comes back, little bits of him get chipped away. He becomes less a person than he was. And then, of course, we get that soul-crushing line where Arya says, "Can you bring back a man who's lost his head?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that whole section was great. I loved it. The Brothers Without Banners bit.
Yeah, I thought it was... I think that line was really good.
I also love the line from the Hound where he says to Arya, "Clearly the gods care about me more than your butcher's boy."
Yeah. It's pretty rough line that was.
Yeah. And I also love the whole thing of Thoros of Myr saying, you know, "The Lord of Light brings you back. I'm just the lucky drunk who says the words." Again, that also really defines who he is as a character. But like I said, I love the detail of them playing Warrior of Light in that scene, because obviously we'd heard that in scenes with the Red Woman and Stannis Baratheon. So I like how they used that same theme when they were in that scene, because obviously they also worship the Lord of Light. And I feel like once you see multiple people across the world both worshipping the same god, and that god showing some very convincing power, that being either a shadow baby that could kill Renly Baratheon or being able to resurrect the dead, I think it really does give some validity to the magic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It starts to build up a lot of questions around, you know, if there are gods or not.
Yeah, it does, for sure. Because he's like in that scene, he literally almost loses his entire shoulder to arm.
Yeah.
But then is healed. So it's a very... Because of all the stuff we've had with all the Lord of Light stuff, with the Red Woman and all that, it's definitely, I feel like the show is doing a decent enough job at setting up the element of magic within the show.
Well, what it does is it presents these events and it allows you to ask questions.
And I do like the line of each time he's brought back, a bit of him is chipped away, because I would hate for something within the world to bring back people from the dead and it not really have a consequence.
Yeah.
I always hate it in stories when they introduce a bit, like it's literally like like Force healing. With the Rise of Skywalker, there's no consequence to it that we know of, because anybody who knows it can just heal anybody.
Aside from the fact that Kylo Ren had to die to use it for some reason.
Nah, he just fell on his back, but then held out long enough.
Yeah.
God, that film's so bad.
Yeah, but I do agree with you. I like that there's a consequence to it, and
as there should be.
Yeah, and it's kind of you get the idea of, you know, it's like you got to ask yourself the question, well, if the Lord of Light is real, then why is he bringing back Beric Dondarrion, you know? Why is he choosing to bring him back? because obviously it's not like a like a self revive. It's literally a god choosing or not choosing to let someone die.
Yeah.
So you got to ask yourself the question is like, well, that means you got to imagine that there's if the Lord of Light is real, then there is plans for Beric to be in a certain point. It's a bit like it's a bit like how in Doctor Who, how the Bad Wolf saw the fixed point of the face of Bo saying to the Doctor, "You are not alone," and revives Jack to be at that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because if Jack died in Pie in the Waste, then none of that happens within Series 3.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least the knowledge.
Yeah. So yeah, you've got to imagine there's got to be a reason that the Lord of Light will bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I genuinely thought the trial by combat, and I absolutely love how after the fight they all still resent the Hound, but they're willing to let him free because the Lord of Light allowed him to win. To me that shows like such a that George R. R. Martin has such a strong understanding of religion and like how it works, and how like despite the fact that all these men want to kill the Hound, they're not allowed to. They shouldn't. They don't believe it's right because the Lord of Light let him live.
Mm. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's a nice detail.
And another scene from that whole section that really surprised me was the scene with Aya and Gendry. I thought Maisie Williams was actually really, really good in that scene. There was when Gendry said that he was going to become a blacksmith for the Brothers Without Banners, you could see her lips quivering.
Mm-hmm. I thought Maisie Williams was really, really good in this episode.
Yeah. She portrayed anger very well.
She did. It could have come across as like so cringy and like undercooked in terms of a performance, but she pulled it off really well. It shows where you give an actress, a young child actress, good direction and good writing, she can show off her skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I thought her acting in this episode was top tier for her, and it really showed that her and Gendry have built a bond since leaving King's Landing.
Yeah.
And it's understandable why Gendry would stay there with the Brothers Without Banners, because he's now serving someone who was voted into power, not a monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting how him being the bastard of Robert Baratheon and he believes in democracy. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that. That was good. That whole section was brilliant. And obviously linking to the whole Kissed by Fire thing, it makes sense considering, the Hound's history, and obviously the Lord of Light as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shall we move on to the next section?
Of course.
Well, another more direct case of Kissed by Fire was the scene with Jon Snow and Ygritte.
Mm-hmm.
Who have actual chemistry.
Yeah, not dog shit like forced down your throat.
Yeah, like
romance story.
Like this is how you do a romance. This is it here. Mm-hmm. And I did. It's one of the few, because obviously Game of Thrones is a very dark show. That scene with Jon and Ygritte was one of the very few times I felt genuinely like happy. I felt like genuinely really happy watching the show.
They felt like school kids, not in a bad way, but in the way the scene was done, felt like school children.
Well, what I loved about it is it was them escaping the world.
Mm.
And like
That's what it felt like.
She says that line, let's never leave this cave, Jon Snow.
Mm.
And obviously, she said, "You know nothing, Jon Snow," which she has said to him before.
Mm-hmm. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Yeah, I really liked that section. Building up to it, obviously we had the scene with Orell and Tormund where they were asking how many castles are manned and how many men are at Castle Black, and I love the direction and the close-ups. It was very intense.
Oh yeah, It was, because I think that, of course, they still wouldn't trust him. It makes sense for them not to, fully.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is that Jon Snow is actually telling them the truth, but they don't believe it.
Yeah.
They don't believe that they don't believe that the Night's Watch is that low on men, but we know it's true because we saw there was a conversation between Tyrion, Mormont, and Maester Aemon in season 1 where they actually were saying how they were running low on men. That's why they could only man 3 castles. So we know that he's telling the truth, but they don't believe him because it sounds ridiculous for the Night's Watch to have men that low.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I thought that scene was brilliant as well. I also really liked the little small detail. Did you notice that before Orell went to talk to him, he was looking at Jon and Ygritte together, and he was a bit. You could see there was like a hint of jealousy.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I thought all of that stuff beyond the wall was absolutely brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was. I think it was good stuff.
Yeah. And it's no wonder that Kit Harington and Rose Leslie got married.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's no shocker.
You know what's really weird is the actress in real life is like a really soft-spoken English lady. So in the show, she's having to put on this like really tomboyish personality and have a Scottish accent. Like the character is very different from the actress.
Oh yeah, I imagine so.
But I love the way that scene links back to that whole conversation he had with Sam about Ros, and obviously Ygritte having red hair as well. And of course, Ygritte is the one that says the line "kissed by fire," obviously talking about another boy who had ginger hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of gingers.
Brilliant stuff. Alright, now let's move on to my favourite part of the episode.
Alright.
Jaime Lannister.
Yeah, that scene was pretty intense and like very...
This episode for Jaime Lannister defines his entire character.
Yeah, it pretty much rips open who he actually is.
So obviously,
of what he's presented himself as.
Obviously, at first he arrives at Harrenhal, and we get that brilliant scene where I love it's one of my favorite like directed scenes, and how you can see like his hair is over his face and it's got mud in it, and it just looks great. And the expression on his face, you can just see how he's feeling at that point in time, how he's at his lowest point. I love the way Roose Bolton uses that scenario to manipulate Jaime into like reacting when he mentions Cersei, because you gotta imagine that Roose Bolton sort of suspects the rumors about Jaime, and you notice how he baited Jaime into reacting when he mentioned Cersei. You notice that? Your sister, and you notice on Jaime's face like he's in terror thinking about her being dead, because obviously he doesn't know what happened in the Battle of Blackwater. Because he's missed all of that. When he got captured, Stannis Baratheon wasn't even part of the equation. So he's missed all of this stuff that's happened in the world. So that was brilliant. Then you've got, obviously, the scene where Qyburn fixes his arm. That was brutal. I love the fact that he was refusing to have his arm dismembered, because, obviously, it means so much to him to have an arm. And then Qyburn offered him Milk of the Poppy, which would ease the pain, but Jaime refused to take it because he's like, no, because if I take Milk of the Poppy, I might fall asleep and you might cut my arm. So he refused to take it. So he decided that I'm gonna take all the pain raw because I want to keep my arm. That was brutal. That was so brutal.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the main reason why I love Jaime in this episode is the scene in the bathtub, which is probably my favourite Jaime Lannister scene of all time, because it literally defines who his character is. The fact that he killed the Mad King to save the city. The fact that, his own father turned on his side because he wanted to pick the winning side, because Tywin chose Robert Baratheon's side, and left Jaime with the Mad King, betrayed his own son. The fact that the Mad King asked him to bring him his father's head. The fact that the Mad King ordered him to take Tywin's head and bring it to him. The fact that the Mad King lit wildfire in Flea Bottom under the Sept of Baelor, even in the Red Keep itself. The fact that the Mad King was so insane that he was going to blow up King's Landing because he thought that he would turn into a dragon and burn his enemies to ashes. And the fact that Jaime killed him to save the city from all of that death. The fact that Jaime saved everyone. The fact that he is the one that saved the lives of everyone we know. The fact that he killed to, prevent all of that from happening. And then, of course, Ned Stark walking in, naming him the Kingslayer, the man without honor, the Oathbreaker. The fact that he is hated around the world because Ned Stark didn't think that what he did was honorable because he killed his own king. That scene not only showing the hypocrisy of Ned Stark's honor, but how misunderstood and mistreated Jaime has been. The fact that he is actually not the horrible man that people think he is. And all this time, all he wants to do is to prove himself. The fact that he is interesting. It's interesting how when you mirror his story with Theon Greyjoy, because Theon Greyjoy's wanting to be loved comes from, him being in a position of no power, and the fact that he has to obey everyone and he has no one to love him or protect him, and the fact that the one person that actually did care for him is now dead, Ned Stark. Whereas with Jaime, he was respected as a fighter. He was in a very high position of power, very privileged, but everyone judges him because he killed his own king, but he killed his own king to save them.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Nikolai Coster-Waldau's acting in that scene was amazing.
I agree.
And you can really see Brienne of Tarth start to respect him.
To properly understand him.
Yeah, properly understand and respect him. And I feel like this really is the turning point for Jaime's character.
I'd say so.
Yeah. I love that scene. It's one of my favourites in the whole show. And that, again, linking to the whole theme of Kissed by Fire. How he was kissed by the Mad King's fire. Just brilliant. It is awesome. That's all I have to say. Jaime's scenes in this episode are as good as it gets for me. For character development, it is as good as it gets for me. Like, Jaime, now in perspective of everything, is one of the most complex, interesting characters in the story. And it's all been building. You remember, obviously, in Season 1, there was that whole rivalry with Ned Stark. That now has a completely different context. Because we know how Ned has caused him to be hated. And it now we now understand why Jaime hates Ned, why he doesn't respect Ned, and why they have that whole rivalry in Season 1 is because of what Ned did to him. Because despite the fact that Jaime saved everyone's lives, Ned Stark called him the Kingslayer. Do you have anything to add on to that? Because I don't.
I thought that scene was incredibly well acted. Probably one of the best scenes in the show. I think that, thinking about it like retrospectively, knowing like how they completely fuck his character, it actually really annoys me, because that scene is so fucking good in terms of really opening up who he is as a person, as a character.
Yeah.
He saved the whole fucking city. Like, and no one really knows it.
Yeah.
It was just a really, really great scene. It's surprisingly, well, I shouldn't be surprised. wasn't written by D&D.
No, it was written by Brian Cogman. Well, obviously adapted from the novels. This is
Sure.
ripped like stem and root from A Storm of Swords. Like this is honestly like this from the books is one of, you know, George R. R. Martin's most praised chapters. I believe it's from Brienne's point of view. In A Storm of Swords, it's one of his most praised chapters in the entire series. It's what this does for Jaime Lannister's character is just outstanding.
Yeah, it's really good.
This is how you do character development.
Yeah.
Something that was already there that we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
By what right does the wolf judge the lion?
It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other detail I like about that whole Harrenhal section is I really like when with Qyburn, I like how obviously he's a maester, but he has no chains because he had them stripped from him.
Yeah.
Because obviously he performs the kind of maester's work that isn't allowed. One other thing about the bathtub scene I forgot to mention was like, you know, Varys couldn't save the Mad King, you know, with his advice. You know, no one could get to him except the only person that the Mad King will listen to was Pycelle, who again we know is a complete bullshitter, and now we find out in the scene that Jaime hates Pycelle, like he absolutely hates him. But yeah, anyway, as I was saying, Qyburn, I love how like he's a maester, but the way he speaks, just he's a little bit odd. You can tell that he's a bit of a whack doctor, you know.
Yeah.
And I like how when Jaime's refusing the milk of the poppy, he warns him about the pain, but he feels no. You can see like Pycelle sort of feels no emotion towards it. He's just sort of stating it. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Pain would be unbearable. And again, like I'll repeat what I said. I really like Roose Bolton and how it also kind of reminded us of like Tywin from Harrenhal when he talked down to Pulliver in the mountain, and obviously it was like, why aren't you getting, you know, these people to work like Arya and Gendry when the tickler was using the rat bucket. It reminded me of that when Roose Bolton basically, you know, told Locke, you know, take that hand away or I'll take your tongue. And then obviously saying, take Brienne out of those ropes, I'm sorry, my lady. I liked that, how gentlemanly Roose Bolton was, and how you can almost, like you said, he's very similar to Tywin in some respects. But he just happens to be on the opposite side of the war. And also, like we've said, it's interesting how a man who is the Lord of the Dreadfort, which is known for torture and flaying men, as we've seen with Ramsay and Theon, he is so gentlemanly, which makes it even more scarier because it means that he tortures people, but he doesn't feel anything towards it. Like he's sort of a bit sociopathic. But yeah, like I said, I loved the way he managed to manipulate Jaime's feelings into sort of baiting him with the whole Cersei thing.
Yeah.
Because if it was any other TV show using that scenario, they would use the pauses to like force tension, whereas it actually makes sense why Roose Bolton's doing that to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
And because of the rumours, he knows what he's doing with the words he says.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone believes it's true.
Absolutely. Right, shall we move on to the next section?
Sure.
Okay, well, another absolutely brilliant section of this episode was Baelish, Littlefinger. The way we found out that he has a male prostitute in his brothel, and that male prostitute, obviously Littlefinger knows that Loras Tyrell's gay. Part of the reason why is because he was there when Renly died, but also, you know, you would imagine that Littlefinger would know anyway. But I love the way he used his male prostitute to get information out of Loras Tyrell. Like the way he's able to manipulate the situation, and how he's aware that the Tyrells want Sansa to marry him, so then that encourages Littlefinger to get a move on or getting Sansa out of the capital, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really liked that. I thought that was great. What did you think of the Littlefinger section? I thought it was really well directed, the way it revealed itself.
Yeah.
Like you said in the reaction, manipulating to the nth degree. You gonna say anything?
No, I haven't got anything else to say.
Alright. Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And I, again, loved the way he's manipulating Sansa, saying, you know, call me Peter. And also, you know, saying to her, it's not about what I want, it's about what you want.
Yeah. It's really good stuff. I really enjoy the writing for Littlefinger.
Mm-hmm. Have you noticed that as time has gone on, his voice has changed slightly?
Yeah.
Because like in season 1, his voice was a bit louder and more, it was more British, whereas now it's a bit quieter and it almost sounds a bit Irish.
It does a little bit, yeah.
Because like in season 1, he's like, I'm not going to fight them, I'm going to fuck them. Whereas now it's like, Sansa, you can trust me. But what I like about it is that the actor has used the episodes to transition his voice, if you know what I mean. Like he's transitioned his voice. It's not like a sudden change. We also have the scene with Cersei, Tyrion, and Tywin at the end. Yeah. Another brilliant scene. I loved how when Tywin brought up, obviously, you know, the whole thing is obviously Tyrion's coming because he's the master of coin, saying that he's, you know, organised for Olenna Tyrell to pay for half of the expenses of the marriage. And I loved that. Obviously, I loved that scene as well with Olenna. That was hilarious. I loved how blunt she is and how straight to the point she was, and how you can very much see like Olenna's basically saying, we've given you everything, and it's almost like with our riches we are now getting power over you because you're now having to bend backwards. I really like that. But I also, the thing I like most about it is that Olenna wasn't being, you know, she wasn't just saying that to get under their skin. Like, she was being blunt and like very obvious of like, we have power and you can't do anything about it because you're in debt. But it was very funny. But the point of it being, once he comes to the room, the council room with Tywin and Cersei, I loved the detail of when Tywin said to him, you're going to be marrying Sansa Stark. And obviously we find out mainly because Cersei's first words comes out when that conversation's brought up. And we know straight away what that means. Like you said, you know, from just those words, we could tell that Tyrion was meant to be marrying Sansa. But my favourite part of that scene is when Tyrion says, I was married before, or don't you remember? Obviously that linking back to the story he told about Tysha in season 1. And then you get that brilliant expression from Tywin where he says, all too well. That was great. That was brilliant, because I think that's one of the biggest things that ties the story between Tyrion and his father together, is that whole situation when he was a 16-year-old, when he was married to Tysha. And then, of course, I love the way the camera flips on the other side of the table when he turns to Cersei and says that she'll be marrying Dolores Tyrell. And then I think one of my favourite things about Charles Dance as an actor is the way he commands presence in every scene he's in, because in this scene, you know, when Cersei and Tyrion refuse him, he stands up and shouts. It says, I am your father and you'll do as I say. You know, I thought that was brilliant. And then one of my favourite bits of direction from the episode was the very last shot, how it had the sigil of the Lannister House, the Lion, but it was backwards, and you had Tyrion and Cersei sitting on either side of a pillar. That was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. I loved that. Yeah, what did you think of that scene?
I thought it was very, very good. I think Charles Dance was incredible in that scene. I think the writing was pretty stellar. Yeah, I think the whole scene was just very well directed as well. The final shot was very well constructed.
Absolutely.
Very good imagery.
Absolutely.
Definitely up there with some of the best scenes in the show so far.
Yeah. Obviously, there was a brief appearance from Marjorie Tyrell, acknowledging what they were talking about in the previous episode.
Yes.
You know, Marjorie saying, I can give you what you want as well. She's saying it to Sansa, but then, of course, Littlefinger's also saying it to Sansa. So Sansa's being presented with all these different options on a silver platter, but then it's now revealed at the end of the episode that she's not going to be getting any of them. She's going to be getting the one she doesn't want. Because now Tywin's going to be forcing her to marry Tyrion. Which is a big twist when you think about it.
It is. I wasn't expecting that. And I think it also shows sort of the... like, in past episodes, we've sort of shown, like, Tywin's a man of honour. He's of the family name. And you can see how far he'll go to keep that respect by delegating his children to practically force them to marry people they don't want anything to do with.
Absolutely, but obviously it makes sense because Tywin has established from the start that the family name is what matters, and he's realizing now that what the Tyrells are doing, he knows that he can't fight with them because they have the riches that he needs, but he realizes that he's going to have to marry his children to Sansa and Loras so that he can maintain that connection and not give all his power away, which makes sense from Tywin's point of view why he's doing it. Marriage is a very powerful thing. Shall we move on?
Yes.
So just when I thought I was out of favourite parts of this episode to talk about, I completely forgot about this. We also have the section at Riverrun where Rickard Karstark kills the two Lannister boys out of vengeance because of his sons dying, which we have established so far makes sense. It makes sense why he's doing it from his point of view. But then, of course...
From a certain point of view.
Then, of course, Talisa, Catelyn and Edmure all advise Robb to hold him as a hostage, because obviously they need the Karstark soldiers on their side in the war. And they say that if they're like, why? Well, if you follow me into war, no harm will come to him. Of course, Robb, being the stupid boy he is, decides to behead him, and we get a perfect mirroring of the scene with Theon and Roderick Cassel from season 2.
We do.
I loved that scene. I loved it. I loved the way that from the start, Theon and Robb have very much been mirror characters on two different sides of a coin. And how, like, Theon being unloved, being the tail side, has caused him to go into chaos to try and be loved, be respected by someone, but then failing to do so and now realizing his issue of it. Whereas with Robb being on the head side, being loved and being the chosen firstborn son of Ned Stark, the young wolf, making mistakes going into war. I love how that beheading scene links to that scene with Theon in season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of my favourite bits of direction from that scene was after he beheaded Rickard Karstark, you could see like close-ups of his like fists clenching.
Yeah.
And then of course, now that he's lost all of the Karstark men, this fucking idiot he is, lost all the Karstark men, to go into battle he's going to have to take Casterly Rock. That's the only option he has left, is to take the home away from the Lannisters. And to do so he needs more men. And the only option he has left is Walder Frey at the Twins, who he could have gotten men from, but because, again, the stupid boy he is decided to go and marry this woman, Talisa, what are the chances of that? You know, what is he going to have to do to convince Walder Frey to get his men on his side if he's broken that promise that he made to him in season 1 about marrying one of his daughters? I think this episode does a brilliant job of showing how hypocritical Robb is, the fact that he criticizes other people for doing the mistakes that he makes. And it's all because he follows the same code of honor that his father did.
Yeah.
But then also in this episode, we get another point of view on that, and we see how Jaime exposes the flaws in Ned Stark's honor. It all links. It's brilliant. What did you think of the Rob section? I thought it was fucking great.
I thought it was really good. I do like for the mirroring of the stuff with Theon.
They obviously played the same music as well from the scene.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought the whole section there was really good. It was quite shocking, and for the acting from all the actors, I think was pretty darn good. Then dialogue again, like for most of this episode, pretty much all the way through, it's you can not really criticize it. I was just saying that I think that the dialogue you can't really pick it apart and criticize it. It's just so tightly written, and so good.
And it perfectly fits the characters. I feel I really like Catelyn's point of view in the scene, in the sense that she's essentially been imprisoned, and she's at such a low level of power, but she still has, that motherly advice to give to him. But Rob doesn't listen. He doesn't listen to his mother. He doesn't listen to his wife, and he doesn't listen to Edmure either.
No.
And the only person in that situation that was on his side was the Blackfish, who was known to be distant from his family. Which makes sense, because in this scene, Rob is doing the same. Weirdly, the most interesting thing about it is that him being distanced from his family is him by following his own father's footsteps. I just love it. I love it. It's so good. All of it. All of it's brilliant. And as I've stated many times before, Brian Cogman is just very good with dialogue. He just knows what he's doing. And I also loved those closing lines from Rickard Karstark, because, again, mirroring the scene with Theon, obviously it's raining and obviously they're playing the same music. But, we talk about Roderick Cassel and how he was saying, what did he say to Theon? He was like, I hope the gods will have mercy on you or something. I can't even remember what he says.
Mm.
But then, of course, in this scene, Rickard Karstark says to Rob, we are the same part of the same family, Stark and Karstark. And I fought for your father, and I fought for you, and now I'm fought to see you lose this war. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I think one of the most unique things about it that you don't really ever see in any other, story, that from what I can remember, there's barely any examples of this that I can even remember. But the fact that they're showing a king becoming tyrannical by following honor. The fact that Rob has become a tyrannical king because he is following honor. I mean, Stannis Baratheon has a bit of a different example of this, but I find that very interesting how Rob has become a tyrannical king due to following honor. The fact that he is so strictly following, this man needs to get what he deserves, despite the fact that it's a bad tactical move.
Yeah.
And it just seems like at this point Rob is making all the wrong mistakes, and he's running out of options. And the only option he has left is to take Casterly Rock with the Frey's men, and he's going to have to convince Walder Frey to bring him an army, even though he broke the vow he swore to him. So you've got to ask yourself the question, is Rob going to find a way out of this? Is Rob going to convince Walder Frey to get his men on his side? And if not, what will happen to him? What will happen to his army?
Maybe not.
And his mother just has to sit there and watch it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Anything else you want to add on to the Riverrun stuff?
No. Pretty much said everything.
Well, another part of this episode that I actually really liked was the introduction of Celis Baratheon, who is the wife of Stannis, and we also have the introduction of his daughter Shireen. Now, I made a comment 2 episodes ago about how I didn't like how they were making a few changes to Stannis Baratheon's character, specifically in that episode. I didn't like how they were making him too villainous. The fact that they were making him sexually advancing on the Red Woman. The fact that it seemed like his number one goal was aiming for power. And it's interesting because that scene in that episode completely contradicts everything that happens here. Because what happens in this episode is far more the kind of Stannis Baratheon that I feel his character is. So it's kind of weird that in the previous time we saw him, he felt so different, because I don't believe that, Stannis is what we saw before in the last time we saw him.
It felt like two completely different characters.
Yeah, and I think the reason why is because this part of Stannis' story was ripped from the books, whereas the other one wasn't.
Yeah.
But with that said, I really liked the Stannis stuff in this episode. Finally introducing his family. The fact that we find out that him and his wife don't love each other, but she admires him. She admires him as the one true king. The fact that she worships the Lord of Light. The fact that she is grateful for the Red Woman coming into their lives. The fact that she believes that her purpose is to see Stannis on the throne and with a son. And you can see in those jars, she's trying to create, sons for him, which is really messed up. But it's obviously because she can't, she's barren and can't bear more children than they have. And the one child that she gave him was a daughter, which won't be suffice for an heir, especially considering she has a condition. I think it did a really good job of establishing how messed up Selyse is, and how she has lost all perspective. And I think if it wasn't for that weird scene we got 2 episodes ago, I would feel a lot of sympathy for Stannis, because in this scene he's very much trying to, he's confessing what he's done to his wife and trying to get forgiveness from her. I thought the acting from Stephen Delane in this episode was really good, and it was unlike anything we've seen before, because he was a lot softer.
It was really good.
He was a lot softer this time round. But I think my favourite thing about this whole section is the introduction of his daughter, Shireen. Because, her mother hates her. Her mother hates her daughter because she brings shame to Stannis' claim to the throne. And also the fact that she has a condition which is called grayscale. So, grayscale is like an infection, and you can see it on her face. That's why her face looks so, crusted on one side. And grayscale will, if it grows, it kills you very quickly. Or at least it will turn you into a man of stone. But obviously when she was a child, they managed to stop it, but she's still left with the scars on her face. Yeah. But what I love about it is that despite the fact that she brings shame to the family, despite the fact that she has this condition, and despite the fact that she's locked away because she embarrasses her mother, and she's irrelevant to Stannis' claim to the throne, she's just a very nice child. She's just a very, friendly child that is just like any other kid. And I love, firstly, how, she goes to hug her father, because obviously, it's her father. She loves her father, but he can't really show that kind of compassion because he doesn't really know his child. He sort of feels distant from his daughter. And you can see he sort of lacks that ability to love. That's the kind of consequence of Stannis being this sort of, unlovable person he is. But you can see there's a small part of him that really wants to have a connection with his daughter. I love the detail of him saying to her that Sir Davos is a traitor because of he's compelled to honor. And what that scene between Stannis and Shireen reminds me of, it reminds me of the scenes between Ned and Arya from season 1. In how he's trying to teach her lessons by code of honor, but the daughter is questioning it. And the daughter's questioning makes sense to us.
Yeah, pretty much.
I thought Stephen Delane's acting was very, very, very strong in that scene. But more than that, the scene that I loved was the scene when she went to visit Davos in prison. Because obviously we'll find out that Davos can't read. And so she offers to teach him. And I like how, she says, what are they going to do to me? Lock us in cells? I really liked that. And then you can see with Shireen teaching him how to read, you can see he genuinely, cares for this little girl. You know, he actually, and that makes sense considering, you know, Davos Seaworth has just lost his son. In Blackwater, he has nothing left to care about, and the fact that this little girl, for no reason other than just being kind, has decided to become his friend whilst he's in prison, to look after him, to keep him company, teach him how to read. You can see that Davos genuinely admires this small child. I thought the acting from Liam Cunningham was great. I thought the way he smiled at her was very well acted, and overall that whole section at Dragonstone was very, very good, and I wish it was like this all the time. And I wish the showrunners had embraced the actual source material and not gone against it like they did last time we saw Stannis Baratheon. Because this was brilliant, I thought. What did you think?
I'm pretty much aware. I thought it was actually really, really good. For the whole section there was actually really well acted.
Yeah.
Definitely probably one of Stannis' best performances.
And also the grayscale links to the Kiss by Fire as well, because the grayscale comes from Valyria, I believe, which was the home of the Targaryens before it was burned. So Shireen Baratheon was also kissed by fire as well. As was Stannis Baratheon when he made a son with the Red Woman. And I noticed in the reaction you made a comment that Selyse was crazy woman, but I think based on what I've just said, you can see how she got to that point.
Yeah.
Like, what did you think of the fact that she's trying to create sons for him in jars?
Yeah, it was very, very odd, to say the least.
Yeah.
We've seen weirder things, but yeah, that was quite an odd image, for sure.
Yeah. And, like, that happening, that with her, with those fetuses and those jars, like, obviously, it's the Red Woman herself who is, you know, trying to do this for her. But you've got to ask yourself the question, is the Red Woman genuinely trying to get her sons, or is she just keeping her at bay? Like, would the Red Woman care about Selyse wanting sons? Got to ask yourself that question. One of the sons that was in the jars was named Eirich. And I think the reason why is because there's a character in the books called Eirich Storm who appears in this section of the story. But you'll see eventually he ends up getting replaced by a different character. Like they morph two characters into one, as they like to do sometimes. Like I think Locke is a combination of two characters. But yeah, there was a character called Eirich Storm who appears. So I think the reason why they called one of the babies Eirich is because of that.
Right.
As like a reference. But yeah, I thought that whole section at Dragonstone was great. I thought it was fantastic. And then the only other section we have left in the episode was the section between Astapor and Yunkai, with Daenerys Targaryen, who finds a leader from the Unsullied, and we are introduced to Grey Worm, who is played by Jacob Anderson. Jacob Anderson is a famous, I think he's either a singer or a rapper. But yeah, we got the introduction of Grey Worm. He obviously wanted to keep his name because it was the name he had when Daenerys saved him. But the main detail from that scene is the conversation between Jorah Mormont and Barristan Selmy, which I thought was brilliant. I loved that scene. Because what I loved about it was they were discussing something along the lines of Robert Baratheon wanting to kill her, which relates to what Jorah Mormont was doing in Season 1, where you have that scene near the wine cellar where Jorah was, given his pardon, then he obviously saves Daenerys despite the fact that he was there to make sure that she was poisoned in the first place. And I like the fact that in that scene, Jorah is constantly questioning Barristan's legitimacy of being there. I love the fact that you're no longer a lord of the Kingsguard, you're now just an exile. You're just another exile. That was brilliant. What did you think of that whole... Because I thought that gave some really good backstory for Barristan, and it also added to the whole story of Jorah Mormont being afraid of what Barrister might say, if he might expose him. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that little scene between the two. I think it was very well done. I enjoy these two characters a lot, and their sort of conversations between the two, talking about like the sort of history of the world and like back in King's Landing, all that kind of stuff. I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the key detail for me is I love how Barristan says that he wants to, before his life ends, he wants to fight for a king that he believes in. He wants to fight for a leader that he believes in, and that gives his character a goal and a purpose. Because obviously, you know, he had to defend, you know, a drunk Robert Baratheon and a madman Aerys Targaryen. And I like the fact that now he wants to fight for someone that he believes in, and he asked Jorah, "Do you believe in Daenerys?" And he says, "With all my heart." Which again, it shows that despite the fact that Jorah in the first place came there to assassinate her for Robert, he now has turned and he's changed. He's now there to serve her. Yeah, I thought that was great. Honestly, like every scene in this episode I thought was great. I thought it was so consistently brilliant.
Yeah. I agree.
Right. Anything else you want to say about any characters or plot?
No, I think we've gone over everything.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like we said, I love the overall theme of Kissed by Fire and how it links to so many different things. It's probably one of the strongest thematic linkings we've ever had so far. Alright, Kissed by Fire received positive critical reviews after airing, with particular praise going to Nikolai Coster-Waldau for his performance. Rotten Tomatoes consensus reads, despite lacking big action reveals of the previous episode, Kissed by Fire is anchored by a devastatingly intimate scene between Brienne and Jaime and plenty of Lannister intrigue. Matt Fowler said it was his favourite of the season, writing no dragons this week, but Game of Thrones still gave us some of its best material ever. David Sims commented on, despite the lack of shocking moments like those last episode, the show delivers quality in its slower dialogue-driven scenes. Vanderworth and Collins gave high scores as well. Overwhelmingly positive review from Rolling Stone, calling it nearly flawless episode, praising especially Maisie Williams' acting in the scenes with the Arya and the Brotherhood. Of course, it was written by Brian Cogman, who I just think his dialogue is so strong, and he is the perfect guy you get to do these slow-paced episodes, I think. He just knows how to develop characters and to write dialogue. I think this is possibly his best we've had so far, I would say.
Probably.
Because it's just so good. It's so good. Everything from top to bottom was flawlessly written, flawlessly executed, you know?
Yeah.
I can't honestly think of one thing in the writing in this episode that I even dislike. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was just gorgeous writing for me. And also the direction was on point as well from Alex Graves. It was just... it was stunning. I mean, there's so many iconic scenes in this episode alone, like the scene in the waterfall with Jon and Ygritte. You've got the brilliant direction of the sword fight. You've got obviously the direction of the bathtub scene, and the scene before that at Harrenhal with like Jaime's hair over his face with mud and like his expressions. You got the brilliant shot of the final shot with Tyrion and Cersei with the lion backwards. You've got the cuts from, you know, the field to the bed with Loras and Oliver, and then the direction of introducing Littlefinger into that scene. You've got the amazing shots when Robb Stark executes Rickard Karstark, and you can see a point of view of his fists clenching. It's just great. I love it. I love the direction of this episode. I can't fault it. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Oh, and also, obviously the close-ups, the scene with Jon Snow, Orell, and Tormund as well. That was great.
That was really good.
And yeah, again, like the shots in Dragonstone too. I really liked those, and how it would slowly reveal, like, you know, with the fetuses in the jars, and then you've also got, you know, with Davos behind bars as well. the whole thing, top to bottom, was brilliant. I thought it was so well executed.
Yeah, I agree.
Masterwork it was. And the music by Raymond Javadi, again, like we said, we've seen in this episode we got a few repeats, but they made sense, like with Warrior of Light for the scene with the Brothers Without Banners made sense, because obviously the Lord of Light is present in that scene. And then, of course, the repeat of the same theme that plays when Theon beheads Roderick Cassel. Almost like that theme, I think it's called Pay the Iron Price. It represents, someone losing perspective. Because in that scene, Theon loses perspective, and in the scene, Robb Stark loses perspective. Yeah, what did you think of all that?
Yeah, I really enjoyed all that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very well done with the music.
Yep. So, the first song we're going to be listening to is called You Know Nothing, which is the theme of Jon and Ygritte. Oh, I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. It's one of the most happiest tracks we've had,
Yeah.
That whole scene in the Springs was unlike any other scene from Game of Thrones, really. It was probably the happiest we've ever had any scene be since in a long time, probably since episode 1 of season 1,
Mm-hmm.
Because with all the darkness in the world, you get that one scene where they escape to what they want the world to be, and it's brilliant. I love it. I thought that song really it really perfectly fits those two characters, Jon Snow and Ygritte. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was.
The other song we're going to be listening to is called It's Always Summer Under the Sea.
It's always summer under the sea. I know, the birds have scales, and the fish take wing. I know, the rain is dry, and the snow falls up. I know, the stones crack open, the water burns. The shadows come to dance, my love. The shadows come to dance, my love. The shadows come to stay.
So with that track, when you listen to those lyrics, like I was saying with the John and Egret scene, you can tell with that song it kind of represents not only Shireen's character, but sort of the episode as a whole, in the sense of people wanting to be in the opposite place of the world that they are. It represents Rob as well, the fact that he wants to escape this war. You know, it represents everything going on in the world at the moment. And I love that. I think, you know, like things like, you know, the birds have scales and the fish have wings. It's this song, I feel, really sums up the episode itself, and also as an introduction for Shireen's character, the fact that she feels wrong where she is, the fact that she's just such an innocent girl, but she's in such a position of, you know, being despised by her mother, the fact that she doesn't fit in to this sort of monarchy situation. It's great. I thought it was a great, you know, choice of symbolic lyrics for the episode. You know, I feel like this episode is, if you want to talk about themes, it's probably the strongest we've had.
Yeah, I would probably say so.
What time is it now for?
Well, it's time for the trivia.
We didn't have Pycelle this episode, but we did hear about him.
He was mentioned and he was called a grey cunt or something.
Kissed by fire is a phrase used by the wildlings to describe people who are red-haired. Egret is described as kissed by fire. To be kissed by fire is considered to be blessed with good luck. So if you're a wildling and you're a ginger, that's a good thing, apparently. In the books, John's sexual encounter with Egret in the cave is told from John's narrative point of view and thus contains some inner thought monologue lost on a TV audience. In his head, John is actually deeply ashamed that he broke his solemn vow of celibacy. Moreover, he knows that sooner or later he'll have to escape from the wildlings and does not wish to hurt Egret's feelings. Lastly, he fears that he may get Egret pregnant. Thus, in his thoughts, he swears to himself that he will never break his vow again. Ultimately, this was for naught, however, as he doing it again later that very same night twice, and then once again a few hours later, night turned into morning. So essentially, he's not wanting to break that vow that he said, you know, he talked about with Sam, but he can't help himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was portrayed the same way, honestly. Even though we didn't get them in a monologue, it doesn't feel like it's any different. You can very much tell that he doesn't want to do it because of the reasons he's stated, but he can't help himself. According to Brian Cogman, the cave with a waterfall that John and Egret have sex in was actually set in Belfast, Northern Ireland. The cave that the Brotherhood Without Banners is based, where the fight between Beric and Sandor takes place, was actually filmed on the same set, simply redressed. After the duel, Beric comments, "Second time I've been killed by a Clegane," referring vaguely to the Battle of Mummer's Ford, in which he was killed for the first time by the Mountain. So we now find out that when Ned Stark sent Beric to go to the Mountain killed him.
Mm-hmm.
That battle has never been mentioned in the show, only in the Brotherhood Without Banners histories and lore. Daenerys Targaryen's scenes in Essos were originally written by Benioff and Weiss as a part of the episode following this one. They were subsequently pushed back into the script for this episode. Cogman also didn't write the scene in this episode between Jon Snow and Orell. The first parts Cogman wrote for this episode were all of the Arya scenes. The last ones he wrote were the Sansa scenes, which proved very difficult, but had to be rewritten anyway due to a production issue. While the Daenerys scenes were written by Benioff and Weiss for the next episode, they were moved into this one early enough in the scripting process that they were actually all directed by Alex Graves, who directed the rest of the episode as well, as opposed to the one from the next one. They were simply edited into this one. The Daenerys scenes were edited in such a way that when Shireen Baratheon is explaining who Aegon Targaryen was and how he lived on Dragonstone Island, where she now lives, and conquered Westeros, her description switches to a voiceover segueing into the scenes of Daenerys, Aegon's descendant. I really liked that. I thought that was great. It was a great segue. Mm-hmm. Benioff and Weiss also wrote the Robb and Talisa scene at the very end of the episode. Bran, Rickon, and the associated characters in their storyline do not appear in this episode. Samwell, Gilly, and the other Night's Watch members north of the Wall do not appear in this episode. Theon and the other House Greyjoy characters do not appear in the episode, and neither does Joffrey, Baratheon, Varys, and Pycelle. This episode marks the debut of Stannis' wife Selyse, as well as his daughter and only child Shireen. Selyse briefly appeared in the Season 2 premiere, played by a different actress as a placeholder, but she had no speaking lines, nor was she identified by others as Stannis' wife. Only by the implication that she stood next to him during Melisandre's ceremony. As with several other major roles, the TV producers held off on making the primary casting for Selyse until they had had enough available screen time to devote to give her a proper introduction. Tara Fitzgerald was cast for Selyse for Season 3, and it wouldn't have made sense to cast her in Season 2, and the character barely appeared and had no speaking lines. The episode actually provides no in-dialogue explaining of why the left side of Shireen's face is disfigured. When she was an infant, she contracted a dreaded disease known as grayscale, which badly scars its victims and leaves large swaths of their skin dead and flaking. Sometimes it's like a really bad eczema. Eczema. No one can catch grayscale from her now, but they are left permanently scarred. Brian Cogman came up with the idea that Selyse keeps the remains of her stillborn sons preserved in jars, which isn't from the novels. He later said that he suggested it half sarcastically, but the other writers really liked it. Cogman also said that he was inspired by an acquaintance who actually had the hands of her stillborn son bronzed and kept them on a shelf. I think it fits the character, honestly. It makes sense why Selyse would do that sort of thing, because she wants him to have a son. This TV series never explicitly stated this, but Jaime's story about Mad King Aerys Targaryen tried to burn down King's Landing with wildfire rather than let it fall to the rebels during Robert's rebellion directly explains why the Alchemist Guild was able to provide such a massive amount of wildfire on short notice for the Battle of Blackwater. So the reason why they had the wildfire in the first place was because of King Aerys. So that now explains that part of the plot from Season 2. You know, why there's suddenly Blackwater out of nowhere. Sorry, not Blackwater, bloody wildfire out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. In the books, Loras Tyrell is left deeply mourning the loss of his great love, Renly Baratheon, and famously swears that he will never love again, saying, "When the sun is set, no candle can replace it." Several critics, including Westeros.org, were upset that Loras has sex with Oliver in this episode, because it seemed rather sudden, as if Renly's death did not deeply impact him. Brian Cogman, however, subsequently did an interview with the website, and specifically addressed this concern. Changes in adaptation meant that Loras had to have sex with Oliver to let it slip that he would marry Sansa, as part of the plot mechanics of the Lannister-Tyrell rivalry. However, Cogman explained his earlier drafts of the episode actually included longer scenes which made it explicitly clear that Loras is not finished mourning Renly. Rather, Loras was very depressed and lonely, and in effect drowning his sorrows by engaging in it, in the hope that it would make himself feel better, but ultimately made Loras feel more emotionally distraught and reminded of how much he misses Renly. Cogman lamented that as we get closer to production of a lot of trims have to be made to this scene, and was one where I had to do that. He acknowledged that the cutting the scene gave the unintended impression that Loras was moving past Renly when he actually isn't. Interesting, so we lose a bit of context to Loras Tyrell because of editing, even though it was filmed. Loras Tyrell is identified as the heir to House Tyrell. This contradicts the books and the HBO Viewer's Guide, both of which identifies Loras as the third son of Mace Tyrell and Ellery Hightower. Loras had already assumed his brother's role in the story, however, so excising him from the series' continuity altogether is hardly a stretch. Writer Brian Cogman went in to explain that Wylis and Garland may have been cut out of the TV continuity for time reasons, though of course there was a time when the writers thought that Shireen Baratheon may have been cut from the TV adaptation. So, yes, in the books that there are 2 more Tyrell brothers, but what they ended up doing is they ended up morphing Loras into the others, so that there's only one of them. So yeah, like they did with Locke, they've morphed Loras into one character, whereas before there were 3 Tyrell sons and Marjorie. Olenna Tyrell lists the support House Tyrell is giving to the Lannister army as 12,000 infantry, 1,800 mounted knights, 2,000 troops, 1 million bushels of wheat, 500,000 bushels of barley, oats and rye, 20,000 head of cattle, and 50,000 head of sheep. In the books, the Tyrell sent an army of well over 80,000 men to the Battle of Blackwater, but not all of those stayed in the capital city, and Olenna seems to be referring specifically to the support given to King's Landing itself. Either way, in the books it is made clear that while the Lannisters have reached the point where they've deployed all of their assets, i.e. scraping the bottom of the barrel by raising green conscripts in the Western Lands who got massacred in the Battle of Oxcross anyway, the Tyrells have not yet mobilized all the armies and they can potentially raise. In the books, Qyburn's treatment of Jaime's stump is narrated from Jaime's point of view, which explicitly says that the main reason he refuses to take milk of the poppy is because he fears that if he allows himself to be rendered unconscious for the surgery, Qyburn might break his word and cut off the rest of his right arm anyway. Okay, so maybe it's quite possible that the scene in the bathtub was from Jaime's POV, not Brienne's. I can't remember, I haven't read the book. But I know that they both have POV chapters. I know she has POV. They both have POV chapters in A Feast for Crows, but I'm not sure about A Storm of Swords.
Right.
Harry and Karstark's first name is mentioned for the first time in the show. Torrin Karstark's name was mentioned before in A Man Without Honor. Rickard has stated in previous episodes that he lost 2 sons, but did not specify their names. It is unclear how and where Harrion died. Robb said that he died on the battlefield. Rickard said he died while fighting by Robb's side, and referred to Jaime as the killer of both his sons. Therefore, it can be assumed that Harrion was killed by Jaime in the Battle of the Whispering Wood. In the books, Rickard's sons Torrin and Eddard, the latter has been omitted from the show. So there was a detail in the books where he had a third son who had the name of Ned Stark. He was named after Ned Stark. Were killed by Jaime at the Battle of the Whispering Wood, while Harrion was taken captive to Battle Duskendale, and his fate is unknown. No Karstark was killed during Jaime's unsuccessful escape attempt. But the thing is, though, I think they wanted to show it on screen because the battle wasn't on screen in Season 1, so I think they wanted to show it actually happen on screen so we could understand. In the books, Robb Stark beheads Rickard Karstark with a poleaxe, but he botches the job and takes multiple strikes to finally cleave off his head, leaving Robb covered in blood. The TV series changes this so that Robb beheads Rickard with a sword, cuts off his head cleanly with a single swing. Brian Cogman explained that this change was deliberately made to parallel earlier scenes in the TV series. Theon Greyjoy had beheaded Rodrik Cassel in Season 2, and he'd poorly done, requiring multiple messy strokes, to show that he hadn't learned proper resolve from Eddard Stark. In contrast, the TV producers wanted to visually emphasize that Robb had learned the martial skill and resolve from his father, so had Robb kill Rickard with a single well-aimed stroke of his sword, to parallel Eddard's opening scene in the first episode of the TV series. Interestingly, however, because the TV adaptation also has the medium of the sound to utilize, while Robb's execution scene visually parallels the execution scene Eddard performed, the music playing during the scene is the same score that plays during the scene in The Old Gods and the New, when Theon executes Rodrik, to give the impression that while Robb does not lack the martial skill, his decision to execute Lord Rickard is unwise, as all of his advisors warned him against it. Also, Cogman noted, because so many scenes are filmed in Northern Ireland, the production team can usually wait for a rainy day, but there was unusually no rain when this episode was being filmed because they felt it was so important for Robb to execute Rickard in a driving rainstorm. This was one of the few times the production team actually had to bring in rain machines to achieve this effect. Brian Cogman also stated that another deliberate callback was when, after Robb Stark beheads Lord Rickard, Robb is so upset that he walks away. He had a tremor in his right hand, when he tries to hide it from the gathered crowd by clenching his hand into a fist and holding it at his side, though it can still be seen trembling. And this scene is a reference to the pointy end when Robb was so upset and afraid after he gave the order to call of the North Bannermen to open war that he couldn't stop his right hand from trembling. So you remember that scene from Season 1 when his right hand was trembling? When he called his men to go into war, so his hand is trembling again, so there's a link back to that scene. As Theon pointed out in that episode, it's actually good that he was afraid, because otherwise he'd be stupid for not realizing what a dangerous situation he is in. Similarly, Robb is not flippantly executing Karstark as Joffrey might a Lannister subordinate. He is aware of how politically disastrous this will be and is nervous, but feels duty-bound by honor to go through with it nonetheless. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Costume designer Michelle Clapton made a point to feature Robb Stark without his full armor in Season 3, but just wearing the normal tunic more often. This was deliberately done to make him look more vulnerable as his position in the war and control over his own army worsens. Without the heavy furs on his armor, it also becomes more obvious just how small and young Robb actually is. This is particularly evident in the final scene in which Robb is looking over his war map in despair after losing the Karstarks from his army, and Clapton said, "He just actually looks quite young again. He's a young boy who's found himself in a very big position." Tyrion angrily points out that he was married once, and Tywin says he remembers it all too well. Tyrion gave the story of his first marriage back in Baelor, and Tyrion fell in love with a peasant girl named Tysha, who turned out to be a whore that his brother Jaime had set up for him so that he could enjoy being with a woman and think she really loved him. When Tywin found out, however, he made Jaime explain everything to Tyrion and his marriage annulled, and gave Tysha to his guards, and then forced Tyrion to watch as they gang raped her. When Gendry tells Arya Stark that he is staying with the Brotherhood without banners, and isn't going to leave her because you wouldn't be my family, you'd be my lady, episode writer Brian Cogman confirmed that Gendry is specifically referring to the class differences between himself and Arya. If they reached Robb Stark's army camp, Arya would go back to being treated as a young noblewoman, but Gendry would be treated as a poor commoner. And they really couldn't keep being friends as they had been during their journey. Cogman was asked to confirm this because some of the internet shippers tried to read romantic overtones into the line, but he dismissed this and said it was fairly obvious that he was referring to their class differences. Cogman also revealed that the original notes in the script gave the instruction that it was supposed to be delivered as a stick it to her line. Gendry would say it as an angry retort because Arya has never known what it's like to be on the bottom side of a class system, so he's bitterly throwing her title back at her. However, actor Joe Dempsey felt that Gendry still cares about Arya because she's been his friend, so he wanted to let her down easy. Therefore, instead of playing the line bitter and angry, he delivered it somber and resigned, as he needs to explain the sad truth to Arya that their time together is at an end. Cogman said he actually thought this was a better idea and a more fitting to the characters, and was glad Dempsey changed it. So that's an actor who's changing the script but doing it well. Just like Christopher Eccleston did with Dalek.
Yeah.
Barristan Selmy explains that although he, as the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, indeed had the right to attend the small council meetings, Robert excluded him because he did not trust a Targaryen loyalist to advise him. Selmy did not mind being because he hated politics. In Season 1 The Wolf and the Lion, Selmy is indeed absent from the meeting. Jaime tells Brienne that Aerys used to burn hands who disobeyed him. In the parallel book scene, Jaime specifically refers to Carlton Chelstead, who did his best to dissuade Aerys of his diabolical plan and was subsequently burned alive. So it just adds another layer to why Jaime had no choice but to kill the Hand. Sorry, not to kill the Hand, to kill the Mad King.
Yeah.
Viewership. So what was it last time? Last time it was like 4.8, wasn't it? It was like 4.8?
I think so.
The overnight viewership for Kissed by Fire was 5.3.
Ooh.
The highest it's ever been. So it's rising. Yeah. It's rising rapidly. Give your conclusion and a rating out of 10 for Kissed by Fire.
Thought this was the best episode of the season so far. It contains one of the, I think, two of some of the best scenes in the show, and throughout the entire thing was phenomenally acted, great writing, really good direction, some lovely shots throughout the entire thing, especially the ending shot. I thought that was very, very good. I'm probably going to give this a 9.5. I think it's the highest we've had for a while. So it's nice to finally have an episode that feels like it's really showing off its strengths. I'd say it's a really, really good episode.
Mm-hmm. I'm very much the same. I love this episode to bits. It gets every single storyline that it tackles, it knocks out of the park, or at least it gets a home run with. I love the Brotherhood Without Banner storyline with the trial by combat with the Hound and Beric. The perfect, symmetry where the Hound, obviously being afraid of fire his whole life, is brilliant challenge for him. Then you've got the resurrection of Beric and showing the power that the Lord of Light possesses. The scene with Arya and Gendry was brilliantly acted. I absolutely loved it. You get the scene with Jon and Ygritte in the Springs was a great romantic scene. It was very happy. I just absolutely loved that scene. I thought it was so good. It was such a showed really the escape from the world that they had. You have the absolutely incredible scene at River Run with Robb Stark making the decision to behead Rickard Karstark, lose the army of his men. The mirroring to the Theon scene with Roderick Cassel was great. And just for Robb's character meaning so much, for him making so many mistakes in the name of honor. You've got the storyline with Littlefinger manipulating to the nth degree, getting Loras Tyrell to spread information to Oliver, and how he's manipulating Sansa Stark. You've got the amazing scene with Stannis Baratheon introducing his wife and his daughter, and then showing her feeling sympathy towards Davos Seaworth, teaching him how to read. That was brilliant. And some of the better character work for Stannis Baratheon we've had, other than, apart from the fact that the last time we saw him it wasn't very well written, but this time it absolutely was. It was brilliant. The introduction of Grey Worm, and then of course that awesome conversation between Barristan Selmy and Jorah Mormont. I loved that part of it. That was great. That really just sort of, I feel like it really did so much for the characters, and the tension between them of Jorah fearing Barristan exposing information about him just built. The very ending scene to perfectly round off the episode with Tywin, Tyrion, and Cersei was great. The acting in it was phenomenal, and the dialogue was written perfectly, and it was just so tense. And the fact that Tyrion brings up the history where he was married to another woman before, and Tywin acknowledges this, was great. It was such a great scene. But if that was the entire episode and that was all we got, I would probably give it a 9.5. But I'm going to give this episode a 10 out of 10. And the reason why is because of the scene with Jaime Lannister. All the stuff with Jaime Lannister is some of my favourite content from this series. This book series, this TV series. It's some of my favourite stuff in the entire thing. It really emphasises and pins down who Jaime Lannister is as a character. And the execution of adapting it from book to screen was absolutely perfect. The dialogue was perfect, the acting was perfect, the direction was perfect, the music was perfect, and it's some of George R. R. Martin's best character work in his entire series. And it's the turning point for Jaime, and everything in it was completely just brilliant, genius stuff. And I love it. So I'm going to give Kiss by Fire a 10 out of 10. The themes prevailed. Mm-hmm. Just outstanding TV. Which means that next time we're going to be watching episode 6, which is called The Climb.
Ooh.
What could The Climb entail?
If I were to make a guess, probably something to do with Bran. That would be my guess.
Oh yeah, because he loves climbing, doesn't he?
He used to love climbing because he can't anymore.
He can only climb in his dreams.
Yeah, if I was to make a guess, that's what I think I would say.
But yeah, what are you hoping for and anticipating for The Climb?
I think we'll start to sort of get an idea of where this season is sort of heading for the second half, because now we're halfway through this season. Think next episode, I'd be surprised if we didn't get a sort of hint of where the show is going to be going for the rest of the season. I think. Other than that, I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Should be good. So yeah, we will see you all next time for The Climb.